Welcome back to the Pathfinders Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Schramm, founder and CEO of Latitude. And today on Pathfinders, we're going to talk about two main things: your personal board of advisors, those multiple mentors, and your career map, what you did along the way. But reminder that the career map is a unique journey documentation of the past, present, future. And we also break it up into 5 different sections, around 5 different dimensions, really, around the job you had, the title, right? The skills, achievements, education, and some of the fun stuff along the way. So get ready to dive in today. We'll post this on LinkedIn and the other social media platforms. And so please comment as you hear something that you're like, oh, maybe that's something that I can put into effect. Share it, because what we found is that the community learns from one another in the community. So without further ado, I'd like to share the favorite quote for our guest today. Remember that not getting what you want is sometimes a wonderful stroke of luck. That's by the Dalai Lama. Our guest today is Colleen Capel. Rhymes with staple. Very easy one to remember. So thanks, Colleen, for that piece. She's the founder of Leap Leadership Solutions, LLC. She brings people and expertise to small and mid-market organizations. And she believes that an early focus on people practices pays dividends for organizations of all sizes, enabling them to better service their customers, achieve their goals, and drive business results. Makes sense to me. Before we bring Colleen onto the show, I love to share that one fun fact, and hopefully she's going to dive a little bit deeper. Before we started, we talked about some outdoor activities, and her fun fact is that she loves outdoor activities of all kinds and baking. We'll have to see if she's watched the Great British Baking Show as well. Welcome to the show, Colleen. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So talk to us real quick about the baking, favorite hikes. What do you like to do outside before we get into the scheduled programming?
Sure. So for a number of years, we were city dwellers, and we moved out of the city and into the suburbs eventually. But before we moved into the suburbs, we purchased a place upstate New York. And it's in the Adirondacks, and there are amazing things to do in the Adirondacks in the winter. It's skiing at Whiteface, where my children grew up from like 3 or 4. So they're pretty good skiers. There is the lake right in Lake Placid. There's a great beach there. There are wonderful hikes, snowshoeing. There's just a myriad of things. You can go ice climbing, which I've not done. I've not done that, but you can. And it's just a wonderful place to be all seasons. April tends to be a little bit snowy and a little bit rainy with the thaw, but it's still a wonderful place to be 12 months a year. And insofar as baking, I make some killer brownies. The best time for me with respect to baking is when it's a volunteer activity, so I can bake as much as I want, and then I can bring it out of the house so I'm not eating it all, because that's what will happen, or my boys will eat it. So like election day, when the school has bake sales and things like that to keep the voters busy and keep them fed, they can buy brownies and cookies that I make. But I do love to bake. I like that much more than cooking regular meals. But the yin and the yang, my husband loves to cook, so he can do that and I'll clean up. So
it doesn't sound like too bad of a situation at all. If you ever need a taste tester or somebody to volunteer, actually for some of our next, there we go. We're just going to volunteer you to bake some things for our next in-person event in the city. It works out perfectly well.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I love it. One of the first questions we ask on the show, Colleen, is what did you want to be whenever you were growing up?
Well, I wish I could say it was something really exciting and unique. I was inspired by Charlie's Angels and other childhood female actresses. I wanted to be a movie star. Yeah. And I even had a stage name for myself. It was Tess. And that's what I aspired to be. And I guess I can say I'm a little bit of an actress, because when you're in HR, you have to put on lots of different hats and different expressions. So, but I did not become a true movie star.
You're still starring in the show of you, right?
Yeah.
Definitely impacting lives. So whenever it got to the age of school, you maybe decided to opt out of the film career path at that point in time. What did you decide to go into? You talked a lot about HR. We know that you're a guru in that space, but what's the educational foundation?
I actually I wanted to be a movie star for quite a number of years, and then I guess I had a dose of reality, and I realized that that wasn't going to be the path I was going to be on, because I didn't start early as a childhood, or baby actress or model. I went to Wells College, which is a women's college, a women's organization, and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted, so I picked liberal arts, and I picked sociology and communications as my major and minor, because it just aligned with what I was interested in more so than, economics or biology or things like that. I still had to take those courses, but I very much enjoyed learning more about the landscape and history in sociology, and communication kind of sparked my interest around marketing and communication within organizations, advertising agencies, and so on. And I think the things that were the big takeaways from me, aside from my education and my friends, was really learning to be a critical thinker, reason rationally, and be an independent individual. Being at a women's college, the focus was on, being a powerhouse as a woman.
And so as you're going through the formative collegiate years, did your professional aspirations begin to shift?
From acting, you mean? You know,
Or formalize, maybe not shift, but maybe formalize in various capacities, because I'm not writing off that acting piece, right? There's still an opportunity for movie star. But hey, look at this. This is going to be posted on audio and video. So here you are getting onto a big screen.
You're right. You're right. Thank you for that opportunity. You definitely will get all the screen credits for sure. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be in marketing and communication. And I also was a dining hall manager. And in summer jobs, I was a banquet manager. So I thought to myself, maybe I would want to go to hotel school, Cornell Hotel School, and get a degree in hotel restaurant. And to be frank with you, when I landed my first job, it happened to have been in recruiting for a Big Four. And that's what really sparked my interest. It happened to me. I didn't, like some folks, know exactly what they want to do, but this one happened to me. And it was a great opportunity to be in a big organization that had best practices and best in class ways of handling what they did in talent acquisition. So I'm not someone who knew exactly what I wanted to do and was figuring it out along the way, is what I would say, Pete.
Whenever you say it happened to you, tell me a little bit more.
Well, as an example, I have two sons. One son is a junior, and he's an econ major with a specialty in financial markets. He wants to work in asset management, and I think he knows that's what he wants to do. And he's been interviewing people in different parts of financial services, and he knows exactly what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I have a friend who was from college. She was a history major, and she knew she was going to law school. I thought about going to law school too, as well as hotel restaurant school. So for me, I was a little less self-directed, and maybe that's a better way to put it. I was a little less self-directed. I have another friend who was a computer science major, and she knew she was going to get into a technology role. And both of those college friends of mine progressed their career exactly as they set out to. I, kind of in the theme of your organization, I set my career path for myself after landing my first job early in career. I set it out after that.
And I think that's an important thing for everybody to realize. A couple of things that you touched on there was, get started with a big organization. They show you and they paint a little bit of the picture of what really good looks like. I started at Lockheed Martin. You're at one of the Big Four, right? Yeah. And you may not agree with everything. You might get frustrated with some of the red tape. It might be a lot less flexibility, but it does provide a lot of stability, especially whenever you're early career. And so folks will reach out to me often and be like, hey, what should I do with my life? And I'm like, well, figure out what you enjoy doing first. And then they say, well, I want to get into this entrepreneurship thing. I say, you can if you want to. It's extremely difficult to do. One thought is to do exactly what you just said, Colleen. So let's talk about, whenever you started to build up those first board seats on your PBA, Was that at that first job? Were there some people? It seems like you kept in touch with a couple of folks from the college days, but how did you start building those first seats of advisors throughout your journey?
Well, it's interesting. The in preparation for this conversation, Pete, it creates a reflection on certain things, right? There's certain questions that we need to think about. And upon reflection in an early career, I didn't realize I had a PBA. I didn't realize it because I was early in career and just starting figuring things out. As I progressed along, and that meant progressing to different organizations and different roles, but also progressing to more higher level roles and more and responsibility, I started to intentionally create a PBA, choosing individuals with relevant experience, diverse perspectives, alignment with my personal goals, and ensuring that they could provide valuable advice and support across different areas of my life and career, and that I could do the same for them, whether it's directly or indirectly. Maybe I'm not their PBA, but I'm actually in a relationship with them and I can share insights that could be helpful for them as well.
Yeah.
That's how I did it. Somebody once said to me, well, you need to have 12 disciples. And the only reservation I had about adopting that was I wanted it to be neutral, a neutral PBA and not be affiliated with something. But I really did say, I did use the number 12 internally for myself to say, who are those 12 people? And they have evolved over the years. So there's somebody who hired me in one of my former jobs who's still a PBA, and we're friends, and he's a coach and advisor, etc. There's somebody relatively new, I'd say probably 2 years. She's a CEO of a product that I met through an executive networking group, and I loved her product. I loved her approach to things. She was very practical. It winds up she joined the wrong executive network group because we were all HR folks and she was the only CEO. But I made a point of talking with her and getting to know her, and so she's on my PBA. So it is diverse, a diverse set of people and individuals. And as I said, it kind of evolves over time, and it's mostly because your career journey changes over time, and your support and your questions and the help you're hoping to get and the conversations you're hoping to have, they change over time. So the conversations now are different than when I was, at my first, second, third job. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. And we talk about in the book the board building process at various phases of your professional journey, right? We talk about you see, I think it's over here. We're getting the office set up down, but the personal board of advisors, the 8-ish people that I might have around me early career. I might have a buddy, accountability partner, functional mentor, cross-functional mentor, champion, maybe a sponsor, but I'm not necessarily going to have a coach. I'm not necessarily going to have a successor. I might not even have one of those other board seats filled just because I'm overwhelmed with all of this. So one of the first pieces is we say, hey, early on in your professional journey, think about your supervisor, your buddy, your functional mentor, and either an advocate or accountability partner, which could be your HR business partner from the start. So that's an easier way to say, hey, we're just going to start off with those first 3 or 4 board seats to fill. But Colleen, this is about you. So let's go back to a little bit more of this HR journey. At what point do you think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the point you've just made is really important for people starting out in their career, and having the framework or the opportunity for that direction early on in a more formal way, I think is very beneficial for people. You asked me and I said, well, I didn't realize I had it, and I didn't intentionally start out to do that. And that's because my parents were in different professions, and my son and my 2 sons will think that way because I think that way now, so I can share that with them. But I think, relative to what the points you just made, I think that's a really great opportunity for organizations to provide that support for their people as they join the company.
It's not one size fits all. Colleen, at what point did you realize that your home was in HR? You were called to be a people person.
I would say it was my first job at the Big Four. It was I joined one of the what's now the big four. I joined one of them. It was the big six at the time. I joined one of them, and that same month they merged with another one. And so I had the opportunity of a kind of best-in-class M&A experience, and then a big push on, because it was campus recruiting, you had to have your act together, and you had to be able to get on campus and say exactly what this new entity was and so on. And so that was a great experience, but it also allowed me to see a completely different side of being in college and working and being hired in an organization, because I didn't get recruited off campus, right? Like some of these folks. So that's where I really saw it. I was able to progress into a couple different roles, which allowed me to see that I really liked doing this. As I started looking and thinking about doing something else after a couple of years there, I realized that I wanted to have a broader role and take on other responsibilities in HR. So it wasn't just recruiting. And that was my intentional next step. And that's what I did. Each move that I made was diversify the product, service, and industry that I was looking at and take a broader role. And at the time, being an HR manager or being a generalist was really what that next step was. If you didn't want to specialize, right, being in rewards or being in employee relations or talent acquisition, you became a generalist or a manager. And so that was what my objective was as I looked at different roles, so that I could be broader and be part of the business directly, as opposed to a partner in talent acquisition or another specialty area. I wanted to be in the business. And so that's what I did, Pete.
So you had some of those achievements and experiences that you wanted to gain along the way. And it seemed like you had the opportunity then to, hey, can I find this internally, or do I have to go external? And I think that's a big thing for our listeners, is to say, hey, career mobility, definitely check. That's where using the Latitude software is helpful to better understand, based on where you've been, where can I or could I go, and then bouncing those ideas off of your internal PBA. But Colleen, let's face it, at certain points, if we're, really looking for something that aligns with us, sometimes we have to go external. There's only so many jobs in certain levels. And if that's where we want to go, we can always come back as long as we don't burn the bridge. But talk to us a little bit about that decision-making process of, hey, this next best step for me right now is to head out to explore other pastures.
So it's interesting you make that point, because when I was at that first role, it was a culture for those types of organizations of, you are an auditor or you're professional otherwise, or you're admin, which was all other. And there was very much a culture of that. And if you weren't an auditor, there was very little progression for you outside of the couple of roles that I had a chance to do. I wanted very much to do another role that I was very capable of doing. And I really, really wanted it. And it kind of goes back to the quote that I can think of a lot of examples that quote resonates with. But I was not going to get the opportunity to progress any further. It just wasn't going to happen. I was not an auditor, so therefore I was not capable in someone's mind to do it. So that's when I said, I need to move on. I need to move to another organization. And it's interesting, because the next organization that I went to was a brand new HR function in each of the regions. And so it was corporate. Corporate was out in the Midwest. So again, there was an organization that I had great experiences with, but I didn't have the opportunity to progress because there were no other roles in the region. And the same thing happened at the next organization. So I would have liked to have stayed. Where I had the opportunity to actually stay and progress into different roles were at larger organizations than the ones I had joined before, minus the big four. But when I took that next role, I had the ability to take new HR business partner, internal partner roles, mostly through changes in the business organization. And to your point about visibility on careers and opportunities in your internal organization, I think one of the benefits of being able to see that is you can, one, track who's moving around, but two, you can actually see what other opportunities are within your organization, which are sometimes hard to find. They shouldn't be hard, but sometimes they are. So I do think there's tremendous value in moving outside an organization sometimes, whether the opportunities are there or not. And then there's tremendous opportunities to move around within an organization you're a part of. And so I've done a little bit of both. So
And at some point you said, hey, I want to go out on my own and I want to be the captain of my own ship. Talk to us about some of the decisions that went into the stages of life right before you made the jump. What was going on there? What were you doing? What were some of those career map boxes that you needed to check in order to make that step? And then on the other side, we always talk about the who. Were there some people on your PBA that you said, hey, I think I might do this wild idea, this wild jump, leap of faith? What else should I be thinking about along the way?
yeah, so a lot of it has to do with your career progression, your journey, what you've done, and then your family is a parallel path, of equal substance, if not more. And in my life, it probably should have been more earlier, but I was busy at work, etc. So I think what it came down to, Pete, was I left my last organization. We were bought out, and they didn't need two heads of HR. But I had the time to think a little bit for myself to say, do I want to go work for someone else in a role that I've been in before and I've been successful and I've loved it? Or is now the time for me to do something on my own and do it with a lot of organizations, do the work that I love to do, and help organizations be successful, building teams of trust and collaboration so their teams do their best work. And I don't have the same family obligations given where my children are in their scholastic situation, career. And I thought to myself, now is time that I can, one, explore being on my own. And it was a leap year. And I thought to myself, I'm going to leap into something else in a leap year. And I'm not going to forget that 24 was a leap year ever. Do I remember any other leap years? No, not really. I can go look it up and Google it, right? But that was my decision. I thought, I'm not going to check off boxes. I'm going to, strike out on my own. And that was, I do believe, Pete, was the biggest factor, was the boys weren't around. And I have time to reflect upon myself and what I think I want to do with the rest of the time in my career journey.
Talk to us a little bit about what you created as you made the leap in the leap year to create Leap.
Well, I think one thing that anyone who strikes out many people who strike out on their own, you can do all these things because you've done all these things for such a long time. But you do need to go to market with something that's more refined so people aren't overwhelmed by all the things you can do. And being an analytical problem solver, it was easy for me to say, well, I'm doing HR consulting, I'm doing all these things. Yeah. But in conversations and interviews that I've had with people to help refine my approach to it, I learned, and people said specifically, if you tell me you do all these things, I'm going to be like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. I don't know what I need from this person or how she can help me. And so I started thinking about narrowing it down to the three things that I really love to do, which is leadership and talent development, team effectiveness, and engagement, because my experience is that all of those areas drive results for teams, which drives results for business. And so refining it down to those three, and then saying to myself, you know what, I'm going to refine it a little bit further, and I'm a team effectiveness coach, and I can deploy various assets and various instruments that I've used in the past to help achieve that with teams. And I did have breakfast with somebody in February of this year who's on my board of directors. And I had breakfast with someone else the same month who was newly on my board of directors. The first one that I am mentioning hired me into a role, and I've known for 10, 15 years, so knows me a lot more. But talking with them and having that conversation, Pete, was, this is what I think I'm going to do. And the coaching and advice was, I think that's amazing. And here are some of my suggestions. Don't lead with your assessment, lead with what the result is the team is going to have. Yeah. And so those two, and I had other conversations, but those two conversations in February of this year were critical to my thinking and not solidifying my decision, because that's a personal decision you have to make on your own. But you trust the people on your PBA, on your board, and they're individuals you want to get advice and support from. That's exactly why you have them. And you I say have them, but that's why they're that relationship with you. And so those two conversations were pretty instrumental in me making a decision. By March 16th, I remember exactly. I forget a lot of things, or don't remember a lot of things, but I remember that. And I said to my husband, I need to start an LLC. And so it was March 16th of this year, influenced by, some of those board conversations, and subsequent to that, how you refine it along the way is a journey as well. Over the last couple of months, and having other kind of board advisor conversations as well to get their opinions and insights.
It'll be interesting to see what happens each March 16th. For me, that drawing the line in the sand was March 4th, 2018.
Oh.
And within a week, I kid you not, it's the weirdest thing. Around March 4th of each year, something remarkably good. There's plenty of bad stuff that happens in the business, but around March, I know something great's happening. So whatever that is, 5-6 years in a row now, something keeps happening. So you're going to have to provide an update to the community and our listeners whenever it gets to be around the Ides of March in 2025. Let me ask another question, Colleen, around, you mentioned different folks on your PBA. They were super helpful and insightful along the way. A question that we get a lot of times is, how do I ask somebody to be on my personal board? Did you ever send a message to this person and say, okay, you're now going to be my champion. I read this book, Pathfinders, and you're going to fill this role. How did you go about that piece of formalizing the relationship, or did you not really put that title on them?
So I'd say it's a combination of both. With my example of the first February breakfast, that was a relationship that evolved over a number of years in the workplace, and we had personal connections as well. And so that is that's a PBA relationship, but I don't necessarily look at it that way. It just naturally evolved. I can tell you there's somebody who I spoke to within the last month or two, and I have a good relationship with that person. I appreciate their advice. They're not on my board of advisors, but I want that person to be on my board of advisors. And so I'm going to have a conversation with her just to that extent. And she's very busy and she's got a lot of things going on. I'm respectful of that. So I'm going to have the conversation in that instance because I would like to formalize it. And it will be, along the lines of, how your framework advises that you have a conversation with someone, and obviously it has to be tweaked to the style and the relationship of the person, but it's a combination of both. I would say, like the person I mentioned that was the CEO who was on an HR executive thing. I didn't ask her. I just started building that relationship and giving back and making sure I was supporting her in every way that I could. So that way, when I reached out to her, she knows that it's more of a formal relationship, but I didn't have the conversation. I just try to give back, and that way the relationship builds itself, because that was a completely ground zero relationship.
And I think that's the best response that we've come to, is it's not one size fits all. And as you ease into it, it's like dating, right? You don't know that this person who you initially get one coffee with is going to be a great match to sit on your personal board of advisors. But as you start to engage and interact, conversation 2, 3, 4, 5, one might think about weaving in a thank you that's more geared to, hey, Colleen, I don't know if you realize this or not, but you've been a fantastic, what I call a cross-functional mentor. And I just wanted to share that with you. And that's been able to be a really, really nice build up your ego, show that attitude of gratitude in action, and then also slightly formalizes it. And maybe we taught them a little bit more about this idea of the diversity of the PBA.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is, to your point, I have people that I thought could be great advisors. But I after a couple interactions, I decided this was not a person I wanted to align myself with between one thing and another. People who are great advisors are people who know what it's like to give back to others and come up with ideas. And obviously, it's a reciprocal relationship. But there were definitely some folks that I thought this could be a good individual to have as an advisor. But then I realized it was all about them. And for me, it's not all about me. It's about the relationship and going both ways. And I'm not looking to align myself with someone who's only about themselves.
I think that's a big piece. We talk about the checklist in the book, right? Those 14 different points for you to put in place. Maybe you tweak it from the Pathfinders methodology a little bit, but figuring out, hey, what are those non-negotiables, and what are those things that I'm okay if I don't have all these pieces, but it's that part of don't settle. And there are a lot of phonies and fakes and people that seem great on paper, but whenever it gets to reality, you say, this isn't the best fit for me at this time. Colleen, one last question for you here is around the value you see with this methodology inside of an organization. You've alluded to a couple of different pieces here, but hey, you're a people expert. You've seen the right way, the wrong way, the ugly way, and everything in between. But whenever it comes to this idea of a personal board of advisors, really structured, right, that mentorship concept, and coupling it with the idea of this career map, past, present, future, visualizing something, where do you see the value inside of these organizations?
Well, I wish that more organizations placed value on this and actually were more intentional rather about how they approach this. And I've always looked for organizations that have been more progressive in that area. And surprisingly, some of them are not. But I think that, we all know that people leave for a variety of reasons, but the biggest driver is the organization, their manager, et cetera. But, engagement drives not only retention and commitment and results, but those are critical for business success. And when I think about your organization and what you can provide to companies and individuals, because it really does come down to individuals, right? When they onboard, they have the opportunity to create boards. They have an opportunity to have mentoring relationships. They get matched up with other individuals. I think it's a great platform to optimize the employee experience, and then the ability to leverage the analytics and to measure results is where I think, I hate to say it, but my experience is a lot of organizations don't do a great job in that area. They talk about it, and I've worked with some really good companies, and now I'm not with them for a number of years, so things may be different. But I really do think that the analytics and being able to measure results and to demonstrate to leadership teams as well as to employees the value of, the investment in them with a tool like this or a platform like this, that's what I would say. And I think once an employee gets an experience with a platform like this, then it sets the bar for the next organization they potentially go to if they don't stay with, where they are. But they do have an ability for more internal mobility and more internal exposure, which is important for people when they think about staying at a company and the investment in their development, because that's what I see this as an investment in people's development. Of course, there's the business part of it and the analytics, but it's an investment in people's their development is how I really look at it.
I love it. Colleen, thanks for taking time to chat with us today. I'm going to do a quick summary here of some of the notes that I took, and I appreciate that special shout out to some of that methodology. So Colleen Capel was a city dweller that moved to the burbs. She's a lover of the outdoors and baking, and no slouch when it comes to cooking up great people solutions. Growing up, she wanted to be Tess and a movie star. Reality made its way into her recipe, and that transitioned into sociology with communications as a major. The first job happened to her in talent acquisition at the Big Four. And early on, she was unaware that she had a PBA, but as she grew, started her formal, diverse, mutually beneficial PBA, moved and grew to widen the aperture, gain more HR experience. And you talked to us about your aspirations to become a business leader, and that led you to a new company. The Wild West with the Midwest opened up the eyes that the grass is not always greener. It did come with more exposure, visibility, and opportunity. And then also the interesting piece that buyout brought bigger business ideas, and you took the leap in a leap year to create Leap Leadership. Leadership and talent development, team effectiveness, and engagement. Give Colleen a call if that's something that you're noodling on for your plans in 2025. PBA is there for proactive advice, guidance, and feedback. March 16th, 2024 is a big date for Colleen and her adventure. She drew the line in the sand. Great tip to beware of the fakes and phonies. We don't want any wolves on our board. Thank you for the shout out to the PBA and Career Map to help employers of all sizes walk the walk and talk the talk. So as we go into this non-leap year, let's all take a leap towards bettering ourselves and those around us. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me.